Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Today I'm going to work on my Serissa japonica. I'm getting it ready for the fall bonsai shows. So this might be its last major pruning before the shows. And after the pruning today, I'll let it grow and fill in a little. So the pruning might make it look a little too tightly pruned. But then with a little bit of growth, it softens that up and it looks quite natural. So that's why I'm pruning it kind of a month in advance of the shows. I'm also going to clean up the trunk, trying to get that green algae off it. And I'm going to do my landscaping for the show. I'll have to decide how I want the surface of the soil to look, if it wants to be a dry landscape, moss, a combination of both, if I add rocks. There's a lot of things I could do. So I've got to decide all that. So this video may be a multi-part video. I think it'll take quite a while to get this tree kind of close to ready for the shows. My first task for today will be to take an overall look at the tree, to see the styling of it, if I've got the best front of the tree, if it's positioned in the pot nicely. So I'm going to start with the canopy. I've been growing this canopy out slowly, and there will be a point where the canopy will get too wide. And I've got to determine what's the best proportions for the tree. So I need to step back and have a look at it and just kind of imagine or cover up parts with my hand to see how it's doing, I guess. How it's progressing, if it's going in the right direction, or if it's getting a bit off track. I'm looking at the tree from the distance now. So the canopy, the wider the canopy gets, the skinnier the trunk looks. And it's getting very wide, the canopy. You can see on the right hand side here, I've got some branches that are hanging down quite low. I've got a few on the left hand side, not as many. It definitely, the canopy is looking a little lower on this side than this side. And I've always styled this tree fairly symmetrically. And I'm wondering, does it need a bit of asymmetry to it? Just to create a little more interest. It's a possibility. It definitely needs a prune. There's a lot of shoots sticking up. Kind of a lot of wild looking shoots that are kind of spoiling the overall image of the tree. And the front view here, I'm not liking the trunk from the front view. It's the bend in it is very two-dimensional. It doesn't come forward, and the root flare at the base is a little, I don't think it's the very best front view. I think a slight rotation could help it. So let's have a look at the trunk up close. So here's a look at the trunk. So this is the current front view, and if I rotate it, I get a bit more flare at the root base here. And the trunk kind of, this part of the trunk is getting quite thick, and it comes forward, and it's looking, I think it's looking better from this view. If I rotate it the other way, the trunk line kind of goes almost away from you. So I think this is a slightly better front right here. Somewhere here. I think it just brings out that root base a bit and makes the trunk a little more interesting. Here it's it stays the same thickness all the way down to the root base. And it just, yeah, I think a slight rotation would help. Maybe, 10, 15 degrees. Which is a major change, because if you look in the top view, it'll mean the canopy will be kind of skewed. Here's a look at the canopy if this was the front view of the tree. And you can see, I'd have to prune it back, kind of making it the oval shape
so the oval shape is kind of straight on to the viewer. So I can do that. It's very long at the moment. So if I change the front view, I can definitely prune the canopy so from the top of the pot it kind of matches the oval shape of the pot more. So you can see it's straight on here, and if I rotate it, it kind of skews the canopy a bit. So that's something I can do, and it's something I've got to think about. If I repot it, it won't be, you know, a full bare root repot. It'll just be basically taking it out of the pot, rotating it, and putting it back in. So kind of a minor change. It's not a dramatic repot.
Reevaluating your tree is something you need to do at least once a year. Kind of take a good look at it and see if there's better possibilities. I've rotated it around, and you know, the back, I've always wanted the back as the front, and it's still a possibility. I talked about, you know, this branch kind of being in front of the branch behind it, but it's something that I could live with. It gives it a very natural looking style. So that's another possibility, is to finally make that transition, making the back the front. Maybe, you know, not straight on this view, but somewhere that kind of makes the branches look good. You know, there's a lot of cool views of the trunk, and I think the current front view isn't the best one. It may have looked the best at one time, but I think, you know, as the tree changes, it maybe evolves and it may need a slightly new front view. So I'm going to look at it and decide. I'll pick out a new front view, and then we'll get it corrected in the pot. I've looked at the tree and I've picked out 3 possible fronts. So here is the current front. So a possible choice is here, kind of rotating it, as I said, about, it's more like 5, maybe 7 degrees, somewhere here. Another choice is the other way, using this as the front, rotating it here. And I think that's what I wanted to do when I repotted it in spring, but I had a major root coming straight out at the viewer. So I chose kind of skewing it a bit, but I think rotating it to this view is better. It shows the root flare really nicely, and the branch structure looks pretty good too. The other possibility is rotating it right around to this view, looking in here. And I think the trunk looks quite good. It's a matter, can I get the branches to look good? It's a tough decision. Yeah, so in this view, the trunk comes up fairly straight, and this major branch comes towards you, which is nice. And then this major one back here kind of goes to the back. So it looks quite balanced in this view. There's this view, which I'm not liking this view as much as the other 2. So I'm going to take this view out. It's not a possibility anymore. So there's just this view, somewhere here, which looks quite nice, or this back view. Tough decision. I'm kind of leaning towards this front one because it's a major change if I reverse the front, and I'm not really sure if I can get these branches looking really good at this point in time. As I said in my last video, it's a goal to reverse the front eventually, but I can't do it all at once. It would require, you know, maybe some major work to the branches.
So I think the front view here would be a good change for it, a good a better front somewhere here. So I better do that. I better use this as the front view. So I'll have to rotate the tree, which means I'll have to pull it out of the pot, rotate it around to the front, and then if I have any roots out at the edges, I'll have to trim them a bit. I don't think it'll be a big deal. I think it'll just be pick it up, rotate it, drop it down, a bit of pruning and filling in with soil. I don't think it'll stress the tree out at all. Okay, yeah, I think this back view is, a possible view for the future. So I'm going to take that out and just go with this. That is the new front view. Kind of right there. Okay, here I go. I'm going to get the tree out of the pot. So I'm just going to lift up like that. So the roots haven't reached the edge of the pot yet. You can see it's just kind of, they're growing well since the last repotting. So I want to rotate it. So let me get the front here. A little more. Just checking my angles. Definitely, could I go a little more on the rotation? If I rotate it more, you can start to see this back branch, which isn't a bad thing. If I have it at this current view, you can't see that back branch. I think just a little more rotation. Maybe to there. So there's the front view you're looking at now. I think that's a better front. And I'm wondering if I could tilt the tree a little. I think so. Just tilting it a little more forward would help. So I'll have to do that with soil. Kind of tilting it up at the back just a little bit. If a tree's bouncy in the pot, you know there's air gaps. If the roots are completely surrounded with soil, you know it's sitting down nice and firm and there's no voids. Okay, so that all seems good. I think the change of front is done. So the rest I'll have to do with pruning to try and make it look as good as it can. I'll give the tree a good watering just to settle it down in the pot. Make sure everything's good. So this Serissa now, because it has a fairly large canopy on it, it uses a lot of water, and I need to water this tree. If it's sunny out 3 times a day, if it's cloudy out twice a day. So you'll find, I'm watering it now in the morning, and you'll find by the end of the day it'll be drying out again. And you don't want the roots of a Serissa to dry out, and you don't want them sitting in wet soil all the time either, because they're fine and they dry out easily and they rot easily. So careful watering is always important with a Serissa. I'm happy now with the new front, the potting angle, so now I can begin the pruning. I'm going to start by looking down at the tree, pruning that oval shaped profile so it kind of matches the pot. Right now it's a bit skewed because I changed the front slightly. I've got the tree on the floor of the greenhouse, so you can see this is about the angle of the canopy, and I want to correct it to here. So I'm going to have to start the pruning. Here I go. And there'll be some coming off the back here. So I'm cutting through, a few larger branches. It's not all just soft pruning, but I've got to do that to get the oval shape back on track. It was getting a bit long, some of these shoots at the edges anyway. So it's getting closer. You can see it's a little sparse here and it's very full over here. So I've got to do a bit more pruning to this side. Some big cuts there. Yeah. Well, that's definitely got the oval shape back on track. I'll have to let this side grow out a little bit and thicken up. Get a little denser here, but the rest is pretty good. A little more off here, I think. I'm going to leave it at that, and I may come in and refine it a little later on, but I think that's got the basic oval shape established now. It's not skewed, it's looking, parallel to the pot. So let's get it back up on the bench now. I'll get all my clippings cleaned up here. Here is a look at the front view of the tree now. So you can see it's changed quite a bit from that pruning. It's made the edges look very heavy. So my next step is I want to go to the side view, and you can see it's slanting towards the front. So I've got to prune this back quite hard to kind of get the canopy on a gentle curve, so it's not all sloping forwards. So it's blue scissor time once again. Okay, so here I go. The top of the tree is right here, and I'll just gently round it out. Trying to make the canopy look balanced in the side view, which may be hard because I have these lower branches and nothing kind of out here. But, time will fill that in. Let's go to the other side view. Do the same, kind of get looking good. Okay, so that's got the side view kind of adjusted. So now I've got to do the front view. Okay, here I go on the front view. So I'll be looking at the front. You'll have a slightly skewed view. So here I go. And it's always, a question, how much curvature do I put in it? The more curvature you have, the more you get that Pierneef style, the thin kind of curved canopy. The flatter I make it, maybe it's a little closer to a realistic style for an African Acacia. So here I go. I'm going to start getting all these big long shoots pruned back. I'm going to start kind of a bit conservative and then keep refining it. Always stepping back, checking on the progress. So you can see I've got quite a curvature to it, which I think looks quite nice.
I need to thin down the edges here. So it's looking good. Be a little more off here. This edge is quite thick. Checking all my views. This profile pruning is pretty important to a tree, getting it in proportion and in check. There's a lot of people that will tell you it's not a good technique, but it definitely is when used appropriately with, you know, detailed pruning. It's not a technique that you just, it's not the only technique you should use. It's one of your tools. And it's a good tool. It gets your tree in the right proportions and shape. So that's looking pretty good. Take it down a bit more here. And I'm doing this work, you know, a month in advance of the shows, because as I said, it'll look a bit artificial at first, but then as it grows in, it starts to look very, very natural. And a lot of trees are like that. You kind of over prune them, and then as it fills in, it starts to get a really natural appearance. Okay, so I think profile wise, the tree's about as good as I can get it. Maybe a little more. It's very close anyway. You can see I've pruned off a big branch there that I'll have to take that stub back to a new branch leader. So there'll be a lot of detailed pruning coming. Okay, so I'm going to step back and have a look at the tree once again. So there is a look at the tree from the front. I think it's improved. I definitely do. I could take this edge over here is a little thick on the right hand side. I could take that back a little. So my next step is the underside of the canopy, getting that curve also, which may require a lot of branch removal. Pruning the underside of the canopy may sound like an easy thing. You just remove all the branches that are hanging down. The trouble is it's a three-dimensional object, so if you remove these branches, you're going to bring the canopy back and it'll look like a rectangle. So it's something that you have to do over time. You know, kind of keeping the profile of the canopy, but bringing this foliage up. And it's something that I found takes a long time. It's not something you can just quickly do. So, the major branch hanging down at the front is this one.
So if I were to cut that branch out, that's what it would look like. And it still looks pretty good. And this branch, because I changed the front view slightly, it kind of, instead of fanning out, it kind of crosses back a bit. So I think if anything, I could take this branch out. And I think I will. It's a big cut and a fairly dramatic one, but I think it's what the tree needs to get this lower canopy raised. And right now the whole tree looks like topiary. It's just pruned to a shape, you know, an umbrella shape. So by, you know, doing selective pruning, I've got to separate the branches, get different levels to the branches so it doesn't look like a prune dome, so it looks more like a natural tree. So that's something I'll be doing. So I'm going to begin by removing this branch. It's a big branch, and I'll try rooting it as a cutting because it's, you know, a pretty good looking branch. So the tool I will use is the ratcheting pruners, because this wood is fairly tough and it's a fair sized branch. So here I go. I better change to my close-up glasses. I don't want to make any mistakes. Oh, here comes the sun. Okay, so that's coming out. Oh my goodness. Now, it's possible I could leave a stub, make it deadwood. I don't think that's a good idea because it's not good looking deadwood, but it is a possibility. I think I better just cut it flush. So I'm going to take a rough cut first, and then I'll come in with the spherical pruners and prune it back. So here I go, big cut coming up. Click, click, it's done. So that branch is coming out. So you can see it's raised the canopy in this area. And I don't have much of a hole here. It's just, you know, still looks very natural. I think it's a big improvement. So I've got to clean this stub up here. So the branch will eventually flow quite nicely like all these other zigzag branches. So I'll come in with the spherical cutters and clean that up. Here I go. So I don't want to cut it back so far that I risk losing this branch. So I'm going to do it in stages, and it'll leave a, you know, a scar here, but they do heal. So I think that's about as far as I should take that back. You can see it's a pretty big scar, but again, by the time the show comes, there'll be some healing. This will discolor. It should blend in quite nicely. Here's a look at the top, so you can see where this branch was here in the profile. So it still looks quite good. And I'll be doing more branch pruning, so you'll see, instead of being a perfect oval, the canopy, there'll be some kind of movement to the edge of the canopy. I'm looking at the canopy now, seeing if there's anything else I can clean up. So there's one branch hanging down here. That's kind of, if I imagine like a semicircle underneath the canopy, it's hanging down in the way, and it's also growing back in towards the tree. Now it does, if I were to remove that branch, again, I'd have a bit of a hole here, but I think that would be good. It allows you to view in at the tree. And you don't want these branches that are growing the wrong direction to develop into big, thick branches, because it just gets harder to remove them in the future. You get bigger scars, and you want to develop the branches that are going good directions. So I'm going to take off at least this part of it. So here I go, another big cut coming up.
Make sure I'm getting all the branches out of the way. Here I go. So that's coming off. Wasn't such a big cut, but it does, you know, open up this hole a bit. But I think it's good. There's a branch underneath here I can prune away. Again, cleaning up that foliage underneath the canopy. There's a few new shoots in here I can clean up. Put those away. And wherever these branches get light, they tend to back bud and grow. So let's clean the underside up there a bit. There's some shoots in here that can get pruned away. Again, some new soft growth. That's helping. It's creating a lot more air underneath here. Shows off the branch structure a little more too. Now let me go around the back. I need to also keep the canopy, the underside, in that shape. I don't want, you know, to be, when you're looking in from the front, you want to see right through the tree, so there's no foliage below the underside of the canopy line. So I've got to make sure it's clean at the back here too. So here's this one big stub I took off. I'm going to prune that back. That was from the blue scissors. There's a branch growing in a bad direction here I'm going to take out. There's a shoot here I can rub off, a low one. One here. And I think this one is a bit low. It can be pruned off. This one. There's one going back in towards the center of the tree. I can pluck that out. This one's a little tall here. Put that one back, and this one. Down low on this branch I have a few shoots growing that I don't want, so they can come off also. And these ones on this branch here, it's got to come off. Keeping this structure clean underneath. So I've been pruning away some of the lower branches at the back, trying to get, again, the underside of the canopy to be curved just like the top for that Pierneef style. And I'm going to prune that crossing branch off there. And it's a slow process, you know. You can't do everything at once. But it's getting there. I think that's as much as I can do at the back. And from the front now, you can see, when you look through the tree, you can look right through the branch structure and you see open space. There's no foliage kind of hanging down. So it's, yeah, the style is getting better. But it's a process that, you know, takes a lot of time. Time and patience, I guess. So now I'm going to step back and have a look at it, and then I'll start sort of detailed branch pruning. Here is a look at the tree from the front now. So I'm just stepping back once again, and I'm wondering, am I getting too long on the left-hand side of the canopy here? Do I need to bring that back a little bit? I think I do. Maybe not. Maybe that's just part of the asymmetry of the tree. I think it's looking good though. I think it's definitely making improvements today. So now I've got to start the upper branch pruning.
separating all the major branches so there's space between them, flattening them out, and it'll give a more miniature look to the tree. Right now it still looks like, you know, it's been pruned to an umbrella shape, just topiary. So that's my next step, is to break that up and make it look more realistic. The last cutting I took off the Serissa is alive, barely alive, but it is alive. So I'm going to plant the new cuttings in the same pot. So I'll trim off the lower branches. And I'll stick it in the pot and we'll just see how it does. Plant it nice and deep. And the rest of the cuttings are pretty small, so I won't keep those. They're just go in the compost heap.
I'm going to prune the branches next, and I'll want them kind of the top of the branch to follow the curved contour, and I want them fairly flat and kind of in almost steps, creating the canopy, and it creates quite a realistic look. If you look at acacia trees in nature, they kind of have these separated branches in clumps, and they're very flat and they follow this curved contour. So that's what I'm after. I may not be able to achieve that totally today, but that's what I'm working towards. I'm going to start with this branch here, and I just kind of wiggle the branch so you can see what's attached to it. So I need to create space between the branches and to flatten it out. Now I could use the blue scissors and shear it, which is probably the best technique because you get a nice long flat surface. And I want to follow this contour, so here I go. The initial profile pruning accomplished a lot of that, but this is a further refinement. And I know, nothing's going to be sticking out of the profile because I've already profile pruned it. So the idea is to prune it back a little more than you want, and then it fills out again and looks just right. So a little more off here. So you can see that pad is kind of on the angle. Maybe not 100%, but as much as I can get it. Like that. And you can see it's already created a bit of separation. And pruning from the top to get more separation will improve that. So that's what I'll do next, is prune looking down from the top, getting that branch kind of isolated so it's not a part of the dome canopy, so it has some separation. I finished the pruning on this branch, getting some separation. And acacia trees in nature, they have pretty zigzaggy branches, but you don't want branches growing back in towards the tree. You've got to do some pruning, sorting the structure out, otherwise branches get shaded out and the tree will become unhealthy. So I'm not too concerned with branches being flowing, but you do want to do some pruning. You want to manage them, otherwise they just become very chaotic looking, and you'll have to do some pretty major pruning later on to sort them out, because you might get all your lower branches might die off from lack of sun. And so some order in the chaos is what I'm saying. There's a look at that branch from the front, so you can see it's already looking better. It doesn't look like topiary. Getting some branch separation is good. I think I've got to take this one back. It's growing a strange direction. Take that stub off there. Yeah. So I'll work away at the other branches, isolating them, putting them to shape, and then we'll come back and have a look at the tree. I think it'll take me quite a while. It takes a long time to kind of detail prune every branch.
but it's always worth it. You always, you know, think, oh, I'm taking so much off, creating all these holes in the canopy. You think more is better with ramification, but it's often not the case. You want separation, and it creates a really nice miniature look to your tree. Here's an example of a branch growing straight up. By removing that, I can get a lot of separation in this area, so I will. Taking that out opens up some holes, separates these branches.
Hello, kittens. That's a pretty aggressive fighting there. You kicked him in the head there. Uh-oh. It's a headlock. Oh, a little bit of licking there.
Here's an update to the work so far. So you can see I'm opening up spaces between the branches. I still have a long way to go, but it's taking form. It's looking better. It doesn't look so much like a topiary top. It's getting a bit of branch structure and separation, which always looks good on it. Makes it look more miniature. Yeah, so I'll keep working away. I have a lot of canopy to go. I've been working away, and you can see all the gaps I'm opening up, creating sort of negative space and branch structure. So I think it's looking good. It's I'm kind of pruning it back to the point where I go, oh my goodness, did I go too far? And that's usually about right, I find, because it does fill in again. So you can see, you know, there's a lot of big holes in the canopy. But I think that's good. I think it needs, like, this area is too dense here. It needs separation like in some of these other areas. So I'm kind of working on the back side now. It's hard pruning branches off to get separation like this, but again, you just pick your best branches and prune off the other ones, the ones that aren't so good, and slowly the tree gets better. But I think it's looking good. I think the shape looks mature. Yeah, it's sure changed from when I started today, that's for sure. I have finished the pruning for today anyway. So there's a look at the tree. You can see it's a lot more open. There's some individual branch structure cleaned up underneath. So I think the tree's improved a lot today. So the next phase for the tree is to grow it out. So right now it looks a little too pruned, and as I said, it'll fill in, it'll grow in the next couple of weeks, and it should look quite natural by then. Here is a look at the tree. So I've got a few holes in the canopy still. There's a big one here that it doesn't look bad. It just, if it was closed in by, you know, about half that gap, it would look really good. I think overall it's still maybe a little dense. I've lightened it out a lot in this area. The back needs a bit more growth over on this side. So yeah, there's still, you know, lots to improve on it, but I think it made a lot of progress today. I think the canopy's looking quite good.
This Pierneef style, this African Acacia style, is quite a challenging style to develop, but I'm really enjoying the process of slowly shaping this tree over the years. So the next step for this tree is to do the landscape work on it. So I'm going to do that in part 2 of this video. And I've got to decide, you know, as I said, is it going to be sand, moss, combination of the two? Do I make sort of a realistic landscape, or should I make it more abstract so your focus goes on the tree. Tough decisions. I think because it is a large landscape pot, I think a bit of a landscape would suit it. I noticed when I was pruning the canopy up that there was quite a few branches, little ones that got shaded out as new shoots grew in and died off, so there was some natural selection of the branches in the canopy. So a new front for the tree, it's all pruned up, it's nice and airy, light can get to every branch now. So next is the landscape work. So that's all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders, thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.